Hi, this is Heidi from Garden Crossings. It is the end of June and I'm going to take you on the June garden tour here at my home garden. For those of you who are new to our channel, Garden Crossings is an online garden center. We ship plants directly to your door. So if there's anything that you're seeing today that interests you, you can go online to gardencrossings.com, check it out, and we'll ship it to your door. For those of you who are local here to Zeeland, Michigan, we have a retail store that we'd love to invite you to come visit, along with our butterfly house. We are a zone 5-6 garden. So for those of you who are wondering, what kind of climate are they in? We are in West Michigan, which is a zone 5-6. So I invite you to take a walk through the garden and see all the beautiful things that are blooming here at the end of June. We're going to start off at the Mailbox Garden because this is where people first see when they drive into your home in most situations, if you're in kind of a neighborhood like what we are. Here at my Mailbox Garden, I have the Clematis Silmakivi, and this plant just continually, year after year, continues to perform and just look amazing. It's been blooming for probably just over a little bit of a week now, and there's plenty of buds left. With this clematis, what I'll do when it's done flowering is we'll trim it back to the base, and usually I'll get another round of blooms sometime around September or October. It's a really bright, kind of I guess just a nice bright blue, but one that is long-lived because it's been here for years and years and years. Other things I've done in my Mailbox Garden are the verbena meteor showers, which are the little purple ball type flowers. This is kind of a pollinator garden. That's a great plant for the butterflies and hummingbirds. Also there at the base is the Kuphia vermillionaire, the orange tubular flowers. That's a plant you often will find hummingbirds on and or fighting over. And then we've got some of the Citron lantana as well. This area in my garden is super dry, doesn't get a lot of water, so these are all very drought tolerant plants that can handle full sun and heat because obviously it's right there by the road, so there's a lot of heat as well. The grass that's right up against the post, that is the Carrick's Toffee Twist grass, and although that's an annual, it does come back for me in my zone 5-6 garden, so that's kind of nice. And then one cone flower that continues to live right there in the center for some perennial interest in this garden. We're going to head up to the front of the house and check out the aquapots. So every year what I do with the aquapots on either side of my garage is I feature the new plants for the up and coming year. So in this case, this aquapot has new plant varieties for 2023. There's a palm tree in the middle that I just do because I love the tropical feel that the palm tree gives. But all these annuals, these are all new varieties for 2023. So we'll start here in the back with some Swedish ivy, just kind of a nice filler in the container combination. The green and white just gives a little bit of character. Not really a flowering plant, but something just to fill in space that has some character and interest. The bright dark, that doesn't go together. The dark, deep purple flowers, that is a new mini Vista. So if you're familiar with Supertunias, this is mini Vista Midnight, part of the mini Vista series. Great both in containers and in the landscape. Also, we have a new mini Vista Yellow. Yellow might not be the actual name, so if it's something different, we'll let you know. But the yellow too is just a great plant for in the container and also in the landscape. Let's head back here. There's a lot of goodies tucked in. There's a new Calibrachoa Super Bells. This is pink lemonade. Beautiful coloration there with the pinks and the yellows. Also, one plant that really has been outstanding is the Nemesia Aromance Mulberry, this purple. This plant is doing fabulous, not only in containers, but in the landscape as well. So typically I wouldn't really think of Nemesia much for the heat of the summer, but this plant has gone through some upwards of 100 degrees and is doing wonderful. There's a new series of sweet potato vine. These are climbing sweet potato vine. So had I put a trellis in this pot, this sweet potato vine would be climbing up that trellis, but obviously a trellis in this pot isn't the right application. So I put it in here figuring if it's going to climb, it's going to also trail. So the things that I like about this is the leaves are really large, but also really deeply serrated as well. Here's my hand up against a leaf just to kind of give you a little idea. I love this color here. I believe this one is the red version. There's like a green, a black, and the red. And I think that looks fabulous up against that yellow Mini Vista Supertunia. Also, there's a new Supertunia Persimmon. Beautiful corally orange with that yellow center. That's doing really nice. Tucked in the back, we have a new coleus. This is Color Blaze Watermelon. I think it's Mini Me Watermelon. Just a very compact coleus, small leaves, a lot of beautiful coloration. And then a new osteo. So typically osteos don't do well in the heat of the summer, but the Bright Light series, they'll take the heat and just go with it. They continue to flower all summer. And this one here is kind of buried by the palm tree, but the color is a lot more intense in the landscape planting that we have done. But really a great plant that's continuing to flower even in the heat of the summer. This year we did shake things up a little bit with the front of our landscape. If you've watched any of my other garden tours, you would notice that I didn't use Supertunias this year. So Supertunia Bubblegum, Paradise, Fuchsia, those are all things that I've used in the front of my landscape. But this year I wanted to try something just a little bit different for the front anyways. And so we did Sun Patience. So the Sun Patience are staying a little bit more tidy, obviously not getting as big as what the Supertunias did. The Supertunias covered all the rocks by the end of the summer. And this year I was just looking for more of a spot look, or just like splashes of color, not a constant mass of color. So they're doing pretty good. The Sun Patience are on drip, so they do get watered every day and sometimes twice a day, which if you're putting these in hot sun, they are going to need plenty of irrigation. In my aqua pot here, the bright purple you're seeing is the Supertunia Vista Jazzberry. That's a new plant for this year, and that's doing really well. Other plants in there are Superbell's Honeyberry. I think that's the variegated one. If not, we'll put it up. And then Superbell's Dreamsicle, which is the orange. And I'm really excited to watch as that continues to go throughout the summer, because I think it's going to trail over and almost cover the aqua pot. So we'll see how it goes as the summer goes on. On either side of the pillars are the Pennisetum Fireworks grass, planted in full sun. There's that really deep, intense burgundy red, and they're just really pretty. They're going to get a little bit taller, but I like putting grass back there because it adds motion into the garden. Aqua pots on either side of my entrance. This new cypress is called Queen Tut, and that's just kind of a nice airy wispy cypress, not quite as dense as Prince Tut and not as tall as King Tut. So just really a neat looking addition to that Tut family and the cypress family. I did also put some of the Nemesia Mulberry, the new for 2023 plant in this container, because I was looking for kind of a purple pink look, and I'm like, you know what, let's give these a try, because I really was loving that plant, and it is doing fabulous here in this aqua pot. Superbena Sparkling Amethyst is doing really nice. And then we've got the Trailing Rose Vein Supertunia in here, along with a couple of the Coral Sun Superbells. So this container is doing good. It's in the aqua pot, so it's getting constant water. These get refilled about once or twice a week, and then when we refill them, we put the water-soluble fertilizer in there, because that way they're constantly getting watered and constantly getting fed. The container up by my front door is quite similar to what I've done in years past. We have the Fuchsia Fireworks, which is a nice variegated foliage with a coral tubular blooms, a great plant for the hummingbirds. Tucked in the back there is a begonia Pegasus with some diamond snow euphorbia, and then we tucked in a couple of the begonias and double superbells as well. So we'll watch how that continues to fill out as the summer goes on. The one thing I did not put in that container this year, which I've done in years past, is the Wandering Jew. That plant just gets so big, so I wanted to try it without it this year and just let the focus go more on the upright plants opposed to all that purple that was trailing over in years past. So we'll see by the end of the summer what I think, but so far I think it's doing pretty good. All right, let's take this around. Under the window there are Bobo Hydrangeas. They'll be blooming probably in a month or so. We've got the Anna's Magic Ball Thuyas. Somebody had asked in my last video, I had mentioned that the lilac tree was going to get trimmed, and that recently has gotten trimmed. So what I did is I had the gardeners take about a third of this plant off. So pretty much they just took the top third, shaped it into kind of a ball shape. All the leaves are gone, which was a little scary because it looks kind of dead from a distance. But if we go in closer, never fear. You can trim plants and not have to worry about them dying. If you can see on there, there's a lot of fresh new growth that gets forced. Let's try to focus it in here. A lot of fresh new growth that gets forced when you do trim your plants. So don't be afraid to trim things because sometimes they'll thank you for doing it. If I let this plant go without trimming, it would just get way too big. And I want to keep it kind of dialed in a little bit. To be honest, if I was real brave, I would probably cut this in half again, but I'm not quite that brave because it's a lot of work. If this tree dies, I don't want to have to rip out all the landscape. As we make the corner, there's some more sun patience tucked in. This giant hydrangea you're seeing here is the quick fire hydrangea. This one has been discontinued, but I think there might be something greater coming because usually when they get rid of a great plant, they have something even greater. So I'm excited to see what that might be. But Quickfire is one of the earliest blooming of the Paniculata Hydrangeas. And you can see this is full of buds. Usually this plant will start blooming sometime around July. And I would say it's on schedule right now here, the end of June, with all these beautiful blooms. Making our way down the hill, the large shrubs you're seeing closest to us are more Bobo Hydrangeas. Can you tell which ones I like? Not many plants in my garden get multiple, I don't usually plant multiple plants in my garden, but Bobo certainly has found its place in many places throughout the garden beds. Between Bobo, we have the Pugster butterfly bush, and we trim these down to about 12 to 18 inches. Here in Michigan, they usually come back from the base, and that's exactly what's happening here. So this will probably bloom mid to late summer. Tucked in up against the house, you can see that dark foliage. That's going to be a hardy hibiscus with those large dinner plate blooms. But even when it's not blooming, that foliage is just magnificent. Some of the smooth hydrangeas are starting to bloom. Tucked in, we have the Hydrangea Mini Mauvette. That one's just starting to open with its bright pink flowers. Up front here, we have the Hydrangea. I believe this one is the Incredible Blush. The blooms are just starting to pink up a little bit. So probably in the next week or so, it'll be in full bloom. Taking the corner here, tucked in here by the trees, so let me finagle my way through. We have a few Clematis blooming. This one right here is Venosa violacea. I might have said that wrong, but really kind of a pretty purple with that starry white center. Behind it, we have the Jolly Good Clematis, just starting to bloom. When I plant Clematis on my trellises, I usually like to plant at least 2 or 3 because that way hopefully there's always something blooming. And even if they're blooming at the same time, it's nice to have different colors all mingled in. As we head to the back of the house, let's see what we have going. We have some Astilbe that's just starting to put up its flowers. Not a lot of color yet. It'll get more intense as those blooms open up, but great for shade to part shade gardens. My Alstroemeria Inca Ice, first blooms right here. This plant is one plant that has continued to spread in this area, and I just love this plant because Alstroemeria is one of those perennials that once it starts blooming, it blooms all summer long, and it makes a great cut flower. So if you're looking for a long blooming perennial, Alstroemeria Inca Ice certainly would fit that bill. Some Stachys blooming, the little purple. Behind it is Clematis Stillwaters, the first bloom. Couple shrubs here. Here's Snippet Lime Weigela. This is already bloomed, but it's got that beautiful lime green foliage. This is a new Jacob's Ladder for 2023. I don't have the name of it yet, but I'll pop it up. This is going to be a spring bloomer. Great foliage there with that creamy white and green. And then the new growth has more of a creamy yellow to it. So even when this is not flowering, the foliage is great in the garden. Under the deck, because it gets a lot of shade, we have a lot of hostas. So when using hostas, we like to mix in the different sizes, obviously, along with different colors. That way they play off of each other. Up front is Hosta Liberty with a columbine that's made its way through. We've got a lot of bleeding hearts that were blooming earlier in the season. This here is Hosta Elegant Fog. Beautiful little Astilbe. Up against the house there are the Hydrangeas Invincible Wee White, and they're just starting to open. When the buds are young, it's kind of a creamy light pink color, and then as they start to open, the blooms turn white. So this will be just a mass of white blooms here within the next couple weeks. A few more new perennials for annuals for 2023. This is a new Lantana, and what I'm noticing here is the color seems to change. And before I say that, I think the gardeners put in two different Lantana. So this here is just a yellow, kind of a yellow bicolor Lantana. And then as we head over here, this is more of a softer palette of pinks, oranges, and yellows. Not quite as vivid as some of the other Lantana, but definitely kind of a new color to add to the Lantana family. Behind it are a few of the Truffula pink Gomphrena. Those really like to be in full sun. They would get much larger, but I think they look pretty up against that green foliage along with being planted with that Lantana. Nestled in this little nook in the garden, we have the Nepeta Cat's Pajamas along the back. Then we have some of the Dicentra Pink Diamonds. Both of these are long blooming perennials. So the Nepeta, I can give it a little trim and it will be back to flowering in full bloom here in about 2 weeks. The Dicentra Pink Diamonds, that just continues to bloom all summer with no deadheading needed. The perennials up front here, the petunias up front here, these are the new Petunia Persimmon. Now one thing I can point out about these is they're hungry. They need fertilizer. So we haven't gotten fertilizer back into this bed, and you can see the plants are a little bit pale green, a little stringy. A little fertilizer would really green that green up and get these flowers back to just bloom in full blast. But beautiful coloration here to add to the Supertunia family. I could see this being planted with yellows and oranges and all different kind of beautiful colors, but this is really a great new color to add to the Supertunias. Back behind the flagpole, got a lot of little fun things tucked in here. Got a daylily that's just ready to explode with blooms. Look at all those buds. We've got the Atlas rose there, beautiful peach rose. Behind it is the Clematis. It's not blooming yet, so I'm not sure off the top of my head which one it is, but once it does start to bloom, we'll talk about it for sure. The yellow plants tucked in there, that's Oenothera. We've got some Bidens along with some of the new Pink Lemonade Super Bells. You can see the different colorations going on. The white are Supertunia Mini Vista White. Here's a new plant for 2023 that the rabbits look like they're loving. Note to self, begonias, surefires do not love rabbits, but rabbits do love them. So this has got nice green foliage with that white flower. So just a really nice way to kind of round out the surefire series of begonias. The pink flowers, because I know somebody's going to ask, Those are Gerber Daisies. Those were a proven winner plant probably 8 years ago or so. I believe Minuteman was the series. They've been dropped, but this is like honestly one of the favorite annuals that acts like a perennial because they've come back year after year. Long stems, a little bit smaller flower than what you'd expect from a Gerber Daisy, but I'm okay with that because those long stems make this a great cut flower, and that color is just a gorgeous magenta. The purple flowering plant is Lithrum. It's doing pretty good. This is one of those plants that gets bugs on it in my garden, but so far it's staying pretty clean and the bugs are staying off of it. Some people are going to say, I can't believe you have that in your garden. That's the most invasive plant ever. In my garden, it stays very contained to where it's at and it doesn't spread. And I love this plant. It's been in my garden for many, many years. And actually, my grandpa gave this to me from his garden. So this is one of those plants that I think has memories because it was passed down to me from a loved one. Up against the barn there, those are the mini Mauvette hydrangeas. They're not blooming quite yet, so those will be giving us a show here in the next video, I am sure. We've tucked in some more petunias and such, mini Vista white, more of the super bells, pink lemonade. Those are just gonna fill that space in. Up front here we have the mini Vista midnight along with the mini Vista yellow, and then there's the Vista Jazzberry. So these also need fertilizer because they're just looking a little bit stringy and a little bit hungry. So that will be on our to-do list when we have time to do it. Another Clematis here blooming great. Been fortunate I have not, knock on wood, seen Japanese beetles yet. So the plants are looking, let's just say, clean and not holy. On top there is the Blue Angel Clematis. It's a light blue clematis. And this has been in my garden for a very long time and it's done really well. Also we have this deep purple here. And I believe this one is the President. And this one too has grown in my garden for many, many years. Let's head on over to this little garden space. This garden space formerly had a giant maple tree, but a few years back in a giant storm, I sat at the deck, slider window, and watched the tree topple over. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life to watch a giant tree just in slow motion fall over. But thankful that it fell towards the thuyas behind it and not towards my house. So that was a blessing in and of itself. In this garden here, there's about 5 or so varieties that we've just repeated throughout this whole circle garden. In the center there is the Limelight Hydrangea that is in standard form, meaning it's on a trunk. Let's go in and take a look here. You can see the trunk tucked in there. This plant gets trimmed in about half every year because I want to kind of keep it nice and tight and not take over this full garden bed. This will be blooming in August, but it gives kind of a nice center focal point in this garden. And yeah, it's gorgeous when it's in bloom. We did red sun patiens, and they're kind of poked in the different places where we had some holes. The 3 shrubs in here that are kind of the repeated version, we have the Maimone Weigela, which is a beautiful variegated foliaged Weigela. This was blooming earlier in the season, so the foliage left behind is just great. Next we have the Bloomerang Dwarf Pink Lilac. This bloomed already. Being that it's a bloomerang, it should put on some more flowers. The first cycle of blooms is by far the best, but I can see some little buds just starting. So we should see some repeat blooms here throughout the summer. Also in this bed, we have the Atlas roses. Atlas roses are a nice self-cleaning rose, very fragrant, like I could smell it back when I was over on the other side of the deck there. And just really nice large flowers. Right now you can see a lot of them have already bloomed. So it's going to send up a next round of blooms shortly. what we'll probably do, because I do like certain things to be a little bit tidy, is we'll come through and trim off all of these areas where the flowers have already faded, because then what it's going to do is give me more buds like that. So we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up once it's finished blooming. But circled around this limelight tree is 3 of the dwarf bloomerangs, 5 of the My Monet Wagilas, and then 3 of the Atlas roses. There's one plant that I noticed that I forgot to talk about as I was coming down the hill, and that is a new annual for 2023, part of the Surefire series, Cherry Cordial. It's got that dark foliage with a bright red flowers. So again, really trying to round out that Surefire series with pink, red, and white with dark foliage, and pink, red, and white with the green foliage. These are great for in the landscape or in hanging baskets or containers as well. Let's take a walk down and see what we have blooming right now in the butterfly garden. So one thing I'm noticing as I'm heading towards the butterfly garden is my sun patiens need a lot more water. They are really looking very peaked out here. So we'll have to probably set the sprinklers to just sprinkle longer, or possibly sprinkle twice a day. That is one thing with sun patiens, is they do like lots of water and they do not like fertilizer. So don't really fertilize your sun patiens, but make sure you give them plenty of water. So as we enter into this bed, on either side of the pathway, I have this grouping of just an assortment of cone flowers. So once they start blooming, there's going to be a lot of different color variations going on. Being that this is a butterfly garden, of course you've got to have the Asclepias. Monarchs is what I'm trying to attract into this space. So we have the white, which is Asclepias Milkmaid. It's not a monarch, but it is a little butterfly. Checking it out. And then the pink one there, that's Asclepias Cinderella. So the milkweed is the host plant for monarchs. That's where they lay their eggs, as well as what the caterpillars eat for food before they turn into a chrysalis and then a butterfly. I believe this is actually maybe a painted lady butterfly. Enjoying this plant. Bobo hydrangeas are these 2 giant hydrangeas. So Bobo typically is a 2 to 3 footer, but for some reason in my garden they are upwards of 4 to 5 foot. What we're going to do at the end of the season is we're going to cut them back to about 12 to 18 inches, which sounds very drastic, but these are getting just way too big for this garden space, and I want to dial them back down to what their height was supposed to be. So that will be a video we'll probably do in the fall, just showing you how we're going to trim them and how we dare trim them. These are the sun patiens that are looking quite thirsty. This is also the time of year when we start getting bugs in the garden, which is so irritating because they start eating the plants. You can see here on the Bobo, something's eating it. Not sure what it is, but... And here's a butterfly bush. This is Miss Molly. This will be blooming, I don't know, hopefully in the next month or so. Got some Monarda tucked in here. And some Spagula. This plant is amazing. Like, to have such beautiful red in the garden, like this is just one of the cleanest reds I've seen. This is Spagula Little Redhead. Behind it is Salvia Pink Perfusion. As we head through the garden path, you can see how we have it lined here with the sun patiens. So for many years I've had it lined with the white sun patiens, and last year we tried something different and used a different color because I was just kind of sick of the white. But quickly I realized that, you know what, white's what it's got to be. And the reason why is because the white at night just glows in the dark. So it creates kind of that moon garden feel. Just this path is illuminated with the white flowers. So this year we went back to white again. Sometimes you just can't change a good thing, I guess. Here we have Lupine. It's pretty much done flowering, but I wanted to show you this flower because I love the purple and the yellow of this Lupine. The Clematis is blooming. This is Viva Polonia. And I can tell that this clematis is hungry because the leaves are very light green. It should be a deep green. So again, we need to get fertilizer out here in the garden. But look at those beautiful blooms, magenta with that white eye. This is one of my favorite colors. You might find me saying that about many things. I have many favorites, and I think it's okay. It's probably like picking, your favorite child. They're all your favorite, right? Back into this area of the garden, there's more of the Salvia. The white is white wands. Annual Salvia, Rockin' Fuchsia, all butterfly plants. We did tuck in some of the Sun-Credible sunflowers back there behind the blue bottles because I think the blue and the yellow looks really pretty together. More of that Spigilla little redhead. Gorgeous phlox. And I'm going to show you something because I'm real here, right? Even I have failures in my garden. This was a red sun patient that just is not getting enough water. So it's pretty dead. It's very dry. One thing I can say though is, thank goodness we have Dichondra Silver Falls that likes it dry and is doing well, even though the sun patient is not. So I need to rethink that next year. Probably some Diplodenia or something that just really doesn't need a lot of water. Tucked in between the birdhouses is a bunch more Aesculapius. These here kind of seeded themselves. This is Cinderella, which will self-seed, but I'm okay with that because this is a butterfly garden. We've got some beautiful lupine. Lupine also at times will seed itself, so you can see there's a lot of seed pods on there. So that's something, let those seed pods turn brown, and then you can sprinkle them in your garden if you want more. Or if you don't want more, just trim them off before they start seeding. In front of the little angel here, we have the Nepeta cat's pajamas. That's pretty much towards the end of its bloom cycle. We should give it a nice little trim, and it'll be back blooming probably in about 2 weeks. Delphinium blue lace. This year we got smart and put it in a tomato cage. And for the most part, it's doing really well. The stalks that actually stayed in the tomato cage. But this is the reason why we put the tomato cage, because you can see these stalks here got out of it and tipped over. It's a gorgeous plant, gorgeous blooms, but Delphinium is one of those plants that I do recommend staking if you have the option and opportunity to do it, or even if it's up against a fence or something, tying it up so that it doesn't tip over. Opening Act Series phlox. It's a hybrid phlox. So if you love tall phlox in your garden, this Opening Act Series is one that will bloom earlier than your tall phlox, so it'll help extend that phlox color season. And you can see this here, this was one plant when it started, so it's continued to creep and get a little bit bigger and bigger every year, and is really a big show of color in this garden. Some more Aesculapius and another of the Opening Act phlox. I believe this one is Opening Act Blush. The hydrangea is the Firelight Hydrangea. This will be blooming in August. So right now it doesn't look like much, but in August it's going to be amazing. Got a few sedum tucked in and around. Not sure why we planted them there because the hydrangea is really covering them. This here's Glamour Girl Phlox. This will be blooming probably in a month or so. Also tucked in here is a Meant to Be Agastache. This is a new Agastache from Proven Winners. This will be introduced in the fall of 2022 with a bright kind of purpley pink flowers. I'm not sure how it's going to do here because I feel like it's probably going to get too much shade, but we'll see. We'll continue to watch it, and it might have to get moved. That is one thing with plants is, trial and error. You don't know if you don't try. And I'd rather be the one trying on your behalf. That way, if something doesn't work, I can let you know, hey, don't try it, it's not gonna work. Or, hey, guess what? I tried this sun plant in a pretty shady area and it did amazing. So I'll be the one to do the trials and give you the feedback. This here is my hosta garden. In with the hosta garden, we have a bunch of caladiums that we tucked in just to add little splashes of red here and there. That bright golden color plant that doesn't look like a hosta, that's Aurelia Sun King. That's a great shade plant that adds a little texture and different color into the garden if you're looking to add a little something in with your hostas. So in creating this hosta garden, things that we kept in mind was the size of the plants, the colors, the leaf shape. So we just planted every hosta that we've ever carried in this garden, and by mixing all the different colors and all the textures and all the different shapes, it's really created a beautiful space. This pine tree's got to get trimmed up because it's getting in my way for videos, so we'll have to get out here and get that trimmed up. But just look at all the different variation of color and sizes. We had a few back there that died, so we planted some new ones in. Tucked a few caladiums in as well. But I think just tucking those caladiums in just gives little splashes. It kind of breaks your eye up of seeing a lot of green and a lot of the blue, and just introduces little hints of red here and there. We planted some of the spot on. This is going to be a spring bloomer, but we had a little spot there, and instead of putting a hosta, I'm like, let's put something that flowers just to add a little bit of difference in character. And again, the foliage fits well with that hosta foliage. Here's another Aurelia Sun King tucked in among the hostas. Just a different flower texture and adding a bright splash of color. As we make the way around, it gets a lot more sunny. So definitely in this corner I've had to utilize that space wisely because I don't have a lot of shade in my garden. So that's where I put all my shade plants, and most of which are hostas. As we walk along this back hill, you'll see we have it lined with sun patiens. This is the hot pink sun patient, and this really kind of, looking back from my house back onto this garden, this red, this hot pink, it brings your eyes back here, and then you can let your eyes wander past the hot pink to see all the different things that are going on in the back. Some of the plants that we have mixed in as we're taking the corner are some astilbe, which handle part sun and part shade. There's a few ferns in here. This black one, this is astilbe Dark Side of the Moon. This actually, the more sun it gets, the better, the deeper the coloration is. So I'm excited to wait for that one to start blooming. We also tucked some heuchera and heucherella in this space. There's some bleeding heart. So early on in the spring, there's some flowers going on with a bleeding heart. We have some hydrangeas in here. We planted can do, whatever it's called now, they keep changing the name, and also Ariba. So I'm excited to watch those two big leaf hydrangeas in this space. I've seen them out in the trial gardens and they've done excellent. So Ariba and can are new ones that we've added out into this garden. You can see there's some dark splotches of heuchera, that's wildberry back there. There's some sedge grass, banana boat, some more astilbes. The bright yellow there is bleeding heart. Another alstroemeria, a pink alstroemeria. There's some Bernera there for great spring color. I did have some tall phlox put into the space too, because I feel like it's just very green or very pink when the hydrangeas are blooming. So in the back there's ultraviolet and also probably pinkadot. So I'm excited to watch the tall phlox because they're going to give me a bigger splash of color in this space. We've got some Atlas roses. Here is the new cypress Queen Tut. So we just planted that right in the ground to see what it would do as a ground planting. There is Amsonia Stormcloud, which was blooming this spring, which is that big clump right there. A lot more hostas, some of the hostas that can take the sun. Also, we put a few creeping phlox in because I wanted more spring color, so the creeping phlox will give us more spring color. More heuchera, some dianthus. We have a hardy hibiscus back there next to that bright yellow hosta. It's supposed to be a black-leafed one, but because it doesn't get the sun all day long, it's tending to lean more towards the green with a hint of the blackish burgundy. Clematis Jolly Good, just starting to put on a few little flowers. Some Astilbe, Spirea. In the back there is the Luminary Sunset Coral. That's a new tall phlox for proven winners for 2023. So that's a gorgeous color. Tucked in here we have hydrangeas that will be blooming. More Astilbe. Another opening act white phlox. We planted some geraniums. These geraniums back here are Geranium Roseanne, which are a long blooming perennial. They're a hardy cranesbill. So long blooming, so it's nice to have those long blooming perennials, which there's not a lot of. This part of the garden is going to be daylilies. It is daylilies. Once they start blooming, it's going to be a sea of color of just all different kind of daylilies. Once we got back here to the pond area, we switched the Sun Patience to the Sun Patient Purple, just to kind of break things up a little bit. In the back, we have some of the opening act phlox, opening act white, and opening act blush. There's a few of the hardy hibiscus back here. You can see the beautiful dark foliage there. I believe that one is Midnight Marvel, which is a lot like Holy Grail. This is one incredible hydrangea. And not even incredible meaning like incredible, because it is incredible, but it's one incredible hydrangea. This thing has gotten huge over the years. It's been in the garden now for probably 15 years or so. And it is just gorgeous. The thing with incredible is that it's like Annabelle, if you're familiar with Annabelle, but it's got sturdy stems, huge flowers, and doesn't flop. And I think the big take home here is that it doesn't flop. Annabelles are known to flop when they get wet and rainy. Incredible just stands really strong and really tall, even with the wind and the rain. This here is the Invincible Spirit 2 hydrangea, just starting to open, so it's very soft pink. The flowers, the florets aren't even open yet, and you already have some beautiful color going on. Tucked in the back there, let's zoom in. Is Rigucci Clematis, little bell-shaped clematis. This area here is just kind of filling in. There's a bunch of clematis in there as well. So once that starts blooming, we'll feature that. This here is Allium, not ready to flower quite yet. A Spirea. Behind the Spirea is Baptisia. So even when Baptisia is done flowering, the plant kind of has a nice shrub look to it. That would get trimmed back to the base in the fall. But even when it's not in flower, it has a really nice look into the garden. Behind it is Rhamnus Fine Line, a nice columnar shrub. That one's very tall and it's very old. This is my Proudberry bush, for those of you who have watched videos specifically on the Proudberry. Right now it's just starting to flower up and bud up a little bit. This plant has beautiful pink berries in the fall. Definitely one of those underutilized and maybe even not so known about shrubs. So if you're looking for something interesting and different, look in my YouTube for Proudberry bush. Here's another hibiscus. This one's got that deep dark foliage. Usually this will start blooming sometime in August. A nice Atlas rose there. Looks really pretty up against that dark foliage. I've got the new Portulaca Mauve Yellow. This is an improved Portulaca. Along the front is the new, for 2023, Mini Vista Scarlet Supertunias. And behind them, oh my gosh, I have not been out here in a while. I took one of every Alstroemeria we bought this year, the Inca Alstroemeria, and planted them here in the garden because I wanted to see side-by-side comparison of what they look like. So there's so many beautiful plants here. I think I'm going to do a video that's just going to be a standalone on all these alstroemerias. So watch for that in the upcoming days. I did plant a reminiscent crema rose, so I'm excited to watch that start to bloom in the garden. This area here, we kind of redid, ripped everything out and replanted. So some of the things that we have in this area here are some of the new cone flowers. Double coated raspberry beret is a new proven winner variety. These here are going to bloom out better later, but these were in the greenhouse, so the flowers look a little bit skewed. One in a melon, hard time saying that. That's going to be kind of a melon single. And then there's also going to be butter pecan double coated, which will be a large double yellow. So we'll feature those as they start blooming, but some things to look forward to. Also the new Heliopsis, Bit of Honey, a nice variegated foliage here with yellow flowers. This is a really drought tolerant plant, so we'll keep an eye on that one too as it continues to grow. Rockin' Low Bright Idea Sedum. This is a ground cover sedum. It has really red stems with yellow flowers. This one blooms midsummer. So unlike a lot of the other sedums that bloom late in the year, this is going to be an earlier blooming sedum. Pretty much on this side is a repeat of what we just saw. So we kind of have a symmetrical garden going on. And over here, this space was planted last summer, so it's filled in quite nice. This one too, we have the incredible hydrangea in the center, and then on either side of it, we repeated what we have in this space. So some of the things in this space here are lupine that are done blooming. Also, this is Heaven Sent. This is a Jacob's Ladder, done blooming. But even so, it looks really pretty with the seed pods. Behind it is the Pinkadot Phlox. Shasta Daisy Marshmallow in the back there. A few cone flowers that aren't blooming yet. We did put a couple annuals in here, just some dahlias. This is an improved version of the Lobelia Compact Blue with Eye, doing really nice in the heat of the summer. The new Osteospermum for 2023, along with the new Nemesia. In the back there is Penstemon, Onyx, and Pearls with the deep dark foliage with the big white flowers. It's a great plant. You can see it's really a good one for the back of the border because it gets pretty large. Here you can see the deep dark foliage color a little bit better. And then the beautiful white blooms. Thanks for walking through the garden. This is Heidi from Garden Crossings.